Good morning all, and welcome to this meeting of the City and County of Swansea Standards Committee on Friday 22nd of March. Can I start please with any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Oliver James.
Thank you. And item 2, are there any disclosures please of any personal or prejudicial interests? None indicated, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of our last meeting, which was on the 19th of January, just a few pages. So I'll take page 1, page 2, and a tiny bit of page 3. All happy that's a fair summary of our meeting? Just a show of hands, please. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the main agenda item for us today is item 4, which is the annual review or the annual meeting with some of the group leaders. So very grateful for the time that the leaders are making available to us today. I think we've agreed, Councillor May, to start with your good self, so you're very welcome. I think we've met before, but my name is Mike Lewis and I'm the chair of the Standards Committee. Hopefully you will have seen in advance. If not, then I think you've got a copy in front of you. There are 2 prepared questions. What I'm going to suggest is that we ask you to answer question 1. I won't read it out because it's there in front of you, but please take the time to tell us what you do as a group leader to promote good conduct and adherence with the code of conduct. I will then open to my colleagues to see whether there are any further questions for you or any follow-ups to the answers that you've given, and then we'll move on to question 2 if that's okay. So you're very welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair. Promoting good conduct. First of all my members of my group are aware of the code of conduct document, and they are referred to it if they think there's any question. Also, they are aware of the Nolan principles, and we sort of use these. We meet regularly as a group on a weekly basis, and amongst those could be potential sort of decisions or actions we're going to take, and we'll do a check through to make sure that it would comply. Do that little check, pre-check and balance before embarking on anything. If there are occasions which we haven't had yet, of any breaches or of the code of conduct, then we would look hypothetically at early resolution rather than escalation, because it could be an honest mistake. But either way, there's this checking through the regular dialogue of a weekly meeting, to go through anything that could be potentially controversial to make sure we stay on the right side.
Without giving too much specifics, can you think of any examples in principle where you have, as a group, discussed something which could have led to a problem? I'll be sensitive to the specifics and any names, but please.
We're and it's not a sort of a defined it's sort of laser beamed on that would affect an individual or anything like that. But at the moment, a big challenge that we've got is we've got as an active travel proposal, a major active travel proposal going through our ward for a cycle lane, which is the biggest challenge that the newer members of the group have missed. Have actually encountered, because they've only been here for just short of 2 years now. This involves a lot of public engagement. There's been 2 consultations. It's a hugely contentious issue in the ward. So the advice is that we've got to be seen to be sort of treading down the path. We do have an opinion of it, but we are absolutely trying to make sure that we do not try and influence or try to influence people in the consultation until that process had completed. So we act as listeners to our electorate, and in fact we changed our mind from the original proposal in response to feedback that we were getting. So I think that's I think is the the big example. It really doesn't matter what you personally think as a councillor, because at the end of the day you're an individual in that community, the same as any of the electorate. You have to put your personal opinions to one side and represent the greater the greater electorate there, and that's our job. And so, following that principle, we will stay on the right side of the code of conduct on that matter. So, sorry for elaborating too much on that.
No, thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to open to my colleagues. Are there any questions for Councillor May around the group leader duty, either in response to anything he said already or anything more generally? Okay, I'm not seeing any indications, so I'll move on to question 2, if I may. The Standards Committee also has new functions under the Act to ensure that group leaders have access to advice and training to support their new duties and to monitor group leaders' compliance with those duties. Is there any support that you feel would be beneficial, either from the Standards Committee or perhaps from the monitoring officer or the Chief Exec's office?
We did in fact discuss this by coincidence in the Democratic Services Committee this very Monday about training. First of all, I'll lay out the significant training that's happened in the past year since we last met, because I think I submitted a full dossier before. So there's been mandatory safeguarding training, and Hugh was sending reminders and advice on how to access the system to complete the training. So my role was to sort of chase people, including myself, to make sure we all complied. There were sort of some teething difficulties because it was the first time it was on a new portal. So one of my members had repeated difficulties on that, but we got there in the end to comply. In addition, members of my group have taken extra non-mandatory training this year, such as scrutiny training to the newer members have done that this year. So any training available to members, both new and old, is valuable, and the opportunities afforded by the councillor are welcomed. Touching on the what extra support at that Democratic Services Committee, I mentioned the fact that I provided you with this huge list last time, and was wondering if there was a possibility that we could actually slot the information in a better way, because I had to individually trawl through each member's records. Now, we're only a group of 4. The largest group on this council is 45. So it took me the best part of an evening to do. So you could imagine that the arduous task for the largest group on the council, the councillor whip responsible for it. So I think that was taken on board as assistance on that Democratic Services Committee, that there could be like a plug-in matrix with dates to make things easier, to actually achieve the task, keep accurate record keeping, and also act as a checklist to assist the group leaders as well.
Okay. So I'm pleased to hear that you're getting good support from Democratic Services team. Hugh, did you want to come in?
Probably just to give an update, a useful update for everyone, really. As promised, I picked that up on Monday. because I'd already picked it up before that earlier, because I've seen the same problem. The Oracle team are working on it. You're not going to be able to get the data yourself. However, once they've got the solution in place, which they're working on, you will have to tell me what you want, and I can get the report run on your behalf. So it's going to save that time, but we're not quite at that position yet, but it's being worked on.
Thank you, Hugh. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Councillor?
No, no.
Okay, so again, I'm going to look to my colleagues as to whether there are any further questions that we wanted to ask. Councillor May? Seeing any indications. Therefore, Councillor May, I'm very grateful for your time and for your presence. You're more than welcome to stay, but if you'd like to leave, then that's fine too. Thank you very much. Good morning, Councillor Jones. Yes, it'll help the cameras if you can.
They're all fixed up.
Are they okay? There we are. Here we are. Good morning. Are you comfortable? Okay, we've met before, but just to remind you, my name is Mike Lewis. I'm the chair of the Standards Committee. Very grateful for your time today. This is our opportunity to review how the group leaders are complying with their statutory new duty to promote adherence to the Code of Conduct and good behaviours. There are two questions. I did say to Councillor May that I wouldn't read them out, and then I've suddenly reflected and thought that if I don't read them, then of course anybody watching online doesn't know what the question is. So I will read them just for the purpose of the recording, if I may. So the first question, what I'm going to do, as I just did with Councillor May, is I'm going to pose question one and give you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say in response to that. I will then go to my colleagues to see whether there are any follow-up questions that they'd like to ask, either on the group leader duty generally or in response to anything you've said. And then I'll turn it around to question two, which is more of an opportunity for you to say whether there's any further support that we can offer. So question one, the Local Government and Elections Wales Act provides that leaders of political groups must take reasonable steps to promote and maintain high standards of conduct by the members of their group. We're interested to hear as to what actions you take now in terms of maintaining standards within your own group and how you are proposing to meet the new duty going forward. So over to you, Councillor Jones, please.
Mike, there's no sound coming through.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so it's something that I obviously do. Yeah, we're okay. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about the old speaker, thinking of the room and not the audience outside. You know, personally, I and you know, on the point of trust, I think I've held senior roles in the party, on the UK board of the party. Chaired the Welsh board. I am a parliamentary assessor. I'm on the disciplinary committee, so I make sure that throughout the country that people, if something goes wrong, they usually come to us. And I've just not long ago been made one of the party's alumni, about 100 of us throughout the country. So various things that I do, and I hope the things that I believe in, that on higher standards, are things that I do myself and expect others as well. Right across the board. I think if you look in the chamber, you get political banter, and you do. But when you get, it's politics after all. But as councillors, I think we get on with the job, and in committee and on scrutiny, both of which are important. And I think, we muscle down and get on with the work and get on with the job, and in the interests of residents of Swansea, and make sure that is the case with the council as well. And I think I chair education scrutiny, and we look at that as being we are critical friends, to the education department in schools, but we give that challenge, but we are that friend as well, and we're all working for the same aim, to get the best education in Swansea. In my case, we work very closely with the Director of Education, for example, and also the Cabinet member and officers. And in fact, Estin said in their recent report that we provided that real challenge, but also worked with the grain to make sure we got the best. And I think that is really important for that to actually happen, because, and I've certainly found out in education that when I do speak to the Cabinet member and the director, we're working, there's an open door. And I think that is important, to build that, again, relationship and trust, which goes back to where I started off from. So those are the main sort of points. I think there are no issues with the group on discipline or anything in that way, and there hasn't been actually since I became a councillor, actually, which is good news.
Thank you, Councillor. And just conscious that the microphone wasn't working, I wonder, would you mind, could I trouble you, please, just to recap the very first thing that you said, which I think was around treating others with respect, and how you'd like to be treated. I think was, if I'm summarising and paraphrasing, just for my colleagues to have heard it, please.
Great, certainly. I mentioned that I'm leader of the Concerted Group. We meet obviously regularly. The group are professional, hardworking, and we always maintain the highest standards. And one of the things that I, take to heart is that we should always treat others as we would like to be treated ourselves. And that goes to officers, to fellow councillors, right across the board, and to residents in our wards, and people across Swansea. And I think that is so important. And if you use that as the basis going forward, you can't go far wrong.
Thank you, Councillor. I know it's a hypothetical situation, but if you had a new councillor join you, how would you set the environment that you've just described there, which is obviously a very positive one? How would you convey that to a new colleague?
Right. Well, we did have new councillors at the last set of elections, because some were leaving and so on. So we did have, we certainly, I think it was 3 councillors, new councillors coming in. So, certainly we sat down and had a chat about what was expected and what the role actually was as well, because I think that's important. So you set the scene. And to be honest, the individuals concerned are, as I say, really professional, hard-working people in their own careers, in their own lives, and that is what they brought to the council. But I think it is important to set that scene.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so I'm going to look to my colleagues as to whether there are any questions for Councillor Jones, either in response to what he said or anything else around the promotion of the group leader duty. Not seeing any indications. Okay, so I will move on to question 2. And again, for the recording, I will read it out if you don't mind. So the Standards Committee also has new functions under the Act to ensure that group leaders have access to advice and training to support their new duties and to monitor group leaders' compliance with those duties. Is there any support that you feel would be beneficial either from the Standards Committee, the Monitoring Officer or Democratic Services in carrying out your duty, and whether we can assist you in any way?
Great, fine, thank you. Yeah. When you say democratic services, I'm certainly in touch with Mr. Evans there about any queries I have, because I think it's really important that you've got that good two-way relationship, and I think that's good. I think training is important, and for everyone, because I always think I learn something every time, and even if I've done something before a couple of years ago, that doesn't mean it hasn't changed, and it really is worth doing. And we did, in fact, all of us took part in a safeguarding training exercise a little while ago, and I think that is important. And even if you've done that before, there will change, and you can always pick something else up that you possibly didn't pick up the time before. So I think training is key, and we do that. And I think, as I say, that is ongoing, and I think that is really important. But from the Standards Committee side, I think we're getting all the support. And I, as I say, if I do have an issue with anything at all, I do speak to Democratic Services, and it's normally around. It could be around training, or it could be an issue, but we work it out very quickly. So a very short answer, really, but it's working.
Thank you, Councillor. So again, any follow-up questions from any of my colleagues? Again, none indicated. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Councillor, before I release?
Nothing at all, really. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss this. I think it's, as I say, it is ongoing, and it's not to say that issues won't come up in the future. But it's really important that I always think as well, instead of sending an email to somebody, I pick the phone up, because I like to speak to someone. And I think that's much, much better. And I think a lot of issues, very often, if people did that, you wouldn't get the issue in the first place. So I think, but welcome the knowledge that we can have your backup and your help should we need it.
Thank you, Councillor. Very grateful for your time. You're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go and do something else. But thank you very much for your time. Nice to see you again. And thirdly, Councillor Holly, good morning. You're very welcome. I hope you can see and hear us clearly.
Yes, we can see you very, very clearly, and hear you all now.
Good man. Okay. Good morning, Councillor. So again, just for the recording, in case anybody's just joining, I'll go through the same format if you don't mind. I will read the first question out, I say, just for the purpose of anybody just dialing in, as they say. So the first question is: the Local Government and Elections Wales Act provides that leaders of political groups must take reasonable steps to promote and maintain high standards of conduct by the members of their group. We are interested to hear as to what actions you take now in terms of maintaining standards within your own group, and how you are proposing to meet the new duty going forward.
Okay, I think I've got a bit of a longer answer than many people, because we haven't got, although we are a group of an opposition group, we have a mixture of people in that group. We have a group of independents and a group of Liberal Democrats. So the disciplinary issues, or the standards issue, is an issue which, in my opinion, is a very individual issue. Like when we have new councillors come in, and we had quite a few this time, we have a buddy system, which someone who's had a lot of experience will actually help the new one that's coming in, attached to them, and that way they learn the role of a councillor and what we are. I think the big difference is when you're in opposition, you need to understand how the council works. And in many cases, I think a lot of new councillors coming in, wherever they come from, rarely know how a council works, how it's financed, and various other issues around that. And it takes some time for people to pick that up. And I think that's one of the things that over the years, I've discovered that when people come in, they seem to think it's the role as a councillor is one thing, but it is totally different. And they need to understand what you're doing is whether you are actually representing people, regardless of who they are, who have elected you to that ward or that area or whatever. And they don't seem to, a lot of people don't seem to understand that, and it takes a bit of time for them to get to grips with that. On a disciplinary issue, obviously we have someone who's the whip of the group. Although the independents aren't in a whipped organisation, they do understand that we have got a set of rules and discipline that must be followed, apart from the code of conduct. But, we have our own codes of conduct as well, which means that you've got to adhere to, if you like, a standard of standard of how you understand what the group we meet regularly as a group, and that group understands, or our group understands, there's a hierarchy, and if we make a decision, we should stick to it. I know in many cases that's not the case. There are personal decisions. That's fine. We can live with that, but we need to know about it. And I think when you talk to certain members of the group, you have to do it on a personal issue. If there's an issue that needs to be discussed about a particular action, or if somebody's done something wrong, I always think it's better to talk individually to them than any other way. And I've done that on a number of occasions. I'm not going to mention names or whatever, but I have talked to people about actions they've taken and how they need to respect others in different political parties, different organizations. And I think it has, I think, been very beneficial over the last couple of years. We haven't had any issues at all. And I think that's the best way. And again, as I come back to the buddy system, which helps with standards as well.
Thank you, Councillor. On the buddy system, that does sound really positive and really interesting. What preparation do those buddies have? Is it that they are going to act as a buddy generally? So, as you said, to become a from an inexperienced councillor to a more experienced one, or are there any specific steers that you give them around the code of conduct specifically, for example?
Around the code of conduct, it is specific about how they act within a council meeting, because I think that's really important, and how they react to members, the members of their ward. I think those two issues are very important. That if somebody phones you up, you should make every effort to contact them. Once either you've done something successfully or unsuccessfully, I think we do tell them that they should keep in contact with them. And I think around the council meeting, I think it's very important that they treat everybody in that council chamber, regardless of who it is, with respect, and with the respect that they would like. So I think there is those sort of issues. I think we need to do. That's what the two primary things that we want the buddies to actually, if you like, instill into the new members that come along. It doesn't always work. I've got to say this. We have some councillors who, for their own reasons, are not fully engaged all the time, and those are, you tend to have very individual conversations with them. So it can be difficult with some people, but others just accept it,
And just for me to understand, confirm what I think I've just heard, that those individual conversations that you called him, would you see that as your role then, rather than the buddy?
Oh, no, it's my role. If there's an issue with, in particular, I'm thinking of one case now where there was a complaint against one of our councillors. I actually dealt with it. I didn't let anybody else deal with it, because I think it's very important that if I have a complaint about someone, or I've heard of somebody's had a complaint about one of our members, then I believe it's very important that I actually deal with it.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before I go to my colleagues?
I can't think of at the moment. You know, I think the issues about standards are very important, but I'll come on to that in the next meeting. Next question.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Holly. Okay, so again, I'm going to go to my colleagues, whether there are any questions that you have for Councillor Holly, either in response to what he said or more generally on the group leader's duty. Not seeing any indicated. So again, I will go to question 2, and if you bear with me, Councillor Holly, I will read it out again just for the live stream. So question 2 is: the Standards Committee also has new functions under the Act to ensure that group leaders have access to advice and training to support their new duties and to monitor group leaders' compliance with those duties. Is there any support that you feel would be beneficial either from the Standards Committee, the Monitoring Officer or Democratic Services in carrying out your duty, and whether we can assist you in any way?
I think this is a question which, in one way, is very easy to answer, but say because we have a lot of cooperation from Democratic Services, in as much as the training issues, we're always informed what's available, and Hugh, in his good way, actually reminds me who hasn't done things, so I got to chase them up. I think one of the other things that an issue which has come up is some of our members found it very difficult to get on to one or two of the training courses because I think lack of electronic knowledge of use of computers, that type of thing, that didn't help either. So I think there was that issue about that. I think at some stage, you know, the use of the new training systems were quite difficult for some of our members to pick up. I think we need to realise that a lot of our members are not in their they're not of an age where they understand computers as much as others. So I think that's the best way of putting that. And you know, the individual did find it quite difficult. But anyway, well, more than one. There was a couple found it difficult. But so I think that, and that was about the safeguarding training. Generally speaking, the training is okay. Because we are bombarded when we get elected with a list of training that some of it is compulsory, some of it isn't. And anyone who's a school governor realizes they've got to do safeguarding issues regularly. It's not just once you do it in a lifetime, you do it on a regular basis. So I think that issue about training is quite important. But also, I think the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is what you do, standards. And I think what, and I no criticism of the Standards Committee, but in some cases, I think members need to understand what Standards Committee is about. And in many cases, they don't. It takes time to explain it to them. And I think in one way, I think we need during our training periods to think about training members to understand what your role is within the corporation or the council. I know we try it, but I think it would be far better if there was if you like, a formal system by which members understood what Standards Committee is about. So I think in one thing, if you ask me, how could you help members? I think one of the things is for you to, or for members to understand what you do and what your roles are. I think, and I think that I have a one-to-one with the chief executive every month. I speak to the senior officers on a regular basis. So I think the any help we need is available, albeit we have a much reduced staff these days. So it's a big call on the staff in many cases to actually help members. And I think that's one of the things that I will have to take away to somewhere else, which I have spoken to the chief executive about. But I think generally speaking, the one thing as I say, I'll go back to what I said earlier on about the standards, and I think it is quite important that people understand what your role is.
Thank you, Councillor. So I take two points, I think, from what you said. I'm going to ask Hugh whether he wants to respond to the first one around training on the training, almost, isn't it? If I can quickly respond to the second one, I think that is, you make a good point, and I think that's one for us to reflect on as a committee as to how we can, as well as these formal meetings with yourselves as group leaders, whether there's any more we can be doing during the year, perhaps on a less formal basis. But thank you. That is, it's a point well made, something that we will reflect on. But I'll ask Hugh, please, to reply or respond to the first point that Councillor Holly made.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Holly. Training, yes. I 100% appreciate how frustrating and difficult it's been for several of the councillors to undertake the new type of training. It's important to give some type of backdrop for this. For several years, councillors were using Learning Pool as a training online platform, and that had embedded, and councillors worked with it quite comfortably. In the last year, we have left Learning Pool and we've moved to Oracle Fusion, and the safeguarding training was the first rollout, mass rollout of an e-learning for the councillors on the new platform. I wrote notes, guidance notes, which helped. Well, I disagree. That's harsh. I wrote guidance notes, which, like several people, they chose not to read, which I know is difficult. However, quickly accepting that people weren't going to read my very short, my one-page guidance note, quickly accepted that. And I added to my guidance note and to the email, if they had a difficulty, to contact me, and I would get HR training officer to contact them at home immediately. And anyone that phoned us would have a response call within 3 hours. That worked, and it got us through the training. I can guarantee you, when I roll at the next mass training, it's going to be much easier because they've used it the once. Some people had problems because they hadn't been set up on the system correctly. So you can see how difficult that would be for a councillor. You know, they're not IT literate, they're panicking and they can't get on, and then to find out it wasn't their fault to start with. So I'm totally apologist, not my issue, but I am sorry that happened. Some people then are using equipment which isn't fit for purpose. Again, there is a policy in place to assist councillors to buy, and for co-opted members to buy, the appropriate kit. So, you know, it's a matter of learning, and the officer support, I think, was tremendous, and it adapted quickly to the situations. I've got to pick up one final point about explaining to councillors what the role of Standards Committee is. I am a little bit surprised at those comments, because the role of the Standards Committee was provided in training by the monitoring officer to all councillors back in May 2022. That training is available online for all councillors to access at any time, and it covered the role of the monitoring officer, the role of the Standards Committee, and the Code of Conduct. That is still there. So any councillor that is unaware of that, I am surprised, but I will, as part of the work I'm doing with the Democratic Services Committee and the training plan, I shall ensure that is at the top of it, and suggest that they do a 3-yearly reminder of that thing. So it's basically twice in a councillor term they get that training done. And I think more frequently would be harsh, really. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Holly, did you want to come back at all, or add anything else?
I'm sorry, I'm not criticism of you, but I did laugh because the one or two individuals who took his advice and they followed it was good, but some of them, I have to say, still found it difficult, as you know, Hugh.
All right, thank you, Councillor. So again, I'm going to go to my colleagues as to whether there are any further questions for Councillor Holly. Mark, I think you've indicated.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Holly, for bringing up that comment about that you feel there should be a little bit more information about what our role as the Standards Committee is. Obviously, you're aware that we produce an annual report that goes to full council. So and that covers a lot of what Q may have just referred to in the that sort of briefing that went out at the start of the new council term. I mean, would you be looking for something a little bit more informal? And apologies for volunteering you, Chair, but would you be wanting one of us to perhaps talk with the group about our role, that sort of thing? Do you think that would help? Thanks.
I think it would. And he was right. We do the training with what the monitoring officer is, what the role of the monitoring officer, what the roles of the standards committee. And last Thursday yesterday, sorry, we had the annual report, and the chair was good enough to come along and say what was in that report, or speak to that report. But it's nothing. That's all well and good, but I think because of the unique nature of the standards, there is a lack of understanding to some extent. Well, why are they there? You know, well, we've got the role and principles, and we've got the code of conduct. So why do we need the standards committee? And the other thing is, and I think this, and I'm sure he will agree with me, but I know members will agree with me, declarations of interest, and what it's the standards role in agreeing that somebody can talk on something when they may have an interest. Like, my daughter works for the authority, and I get dispensation from the standards committee to be able to talk about social services. And I think it's that type of thing, because people are so concerned about declarations of interest. In some cases, it takes up longer than it does for the rest of the council meeting, because people are concerned, let's be blunt about it. So I think the role of standards have in that, just that one instant, I think is very important,
Thank you both. And I think I've never been a politician, Mark, but I will come back to my previous answer, which we will reflect on the point that Councillor Holly has made and to see how better we can discharge that which he's asked. Okay, any further questions for Councillor Holly? Again, indicated. So Councillor Holly, again, I'm going to thank you for your time this morning. You're more than welcome to stay or to leave us, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, and I will leave as I've got a few other things I've got to get into to do. Okay.
I can imagine. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
All the best, and thank you.
Thank you
again once and all.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to item 5 on the agenda, which is the review of community and town council training plans. Do you want to take us through this, Hugh, please?
Thank you, Chair. Last year, you looked at community and town council training plans. If you recall, it came to your attention because of an issue we had with the community council in relation to financial conduct, and you were keen to ensure that the community and town councils were receiving, or certainly being offered training, certainly in financial matters. This moved you towards asking to see copies of the training plans, which we have seen, and they do cover. They do ask for financial matters to be included in training. Obviously, and this is where it gets difficult, to force a councillor. We use the term quite openly within Swansea, mandatory training and compulsory training. The reality is there is no stick that we can beat the councillor with, or a co-opted member to do their training. There's nothing. So, when I've rolled out, I've asked all councillors, all 75 councillors, to do the safeguarding training. If they refuse, there is nothing I can do about it. I rely on group leaders. I rely on naming and shaming. But there is nothing out there. At the moment, all councillors have got until the end of this month to do safeguarding training, and 73 or 75 have done it. And, you know, and bear in mind, this best part of 2 weeks, well, 9 days to go. I'm confident that all will have finished it in that period. But if not, then we name and shame, and that tends to get it done quickly. That is an interesting factor that there is. You know, the Welsh Government did consider putting something stronger in place to force the issue, but it was deemed not to in the end. With training plans, you can see that 23 out of 24 have them in place. The one community council that doesn't have it has now drafted it. They've gone through a number of clerks in the last year or so, so that is the reason why their delay. Well, I presume that's the reason for their delay. It's out for consultation, and that should be adopted early in April. So that's positive. I've nothing else to add to the report, but I'm willing to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Hugh. I suppose I just wanted to be clear and to check my understanding. I believe our role as the Standards Committee is to ensure that the training plans are in place. So I suppose that's the first question. Is that our role to check that they're in place? And then a second, if the answer to that is yes, you know, we're not massively resourced. I can't imagine that we would have anywhere near the resource to look at the detail of them and what they contain. So the second bit feels like a step too far because we just wouldn't have that resource. But so what is our role as a Standards Committee? What assurance do we have to provide?
Right. First point, you have no role in this area at all. Your role as a Standards Committee is purely relating to Code of Conduct matters. And as I said, the reason you were interested in training plan, which is not a step too far, it's quite reasonable to look at what you were looking at, but you wanted to reassure yourselves that the community councils were learning from things that you had dealt with, and you'd spotted an absence in training in a certain area, which was finance, and you were keen to encourage them to do it. But, you know, we wrote to the councils, advised them to get necessary training in finance. That's where your matter ends. If they fail to do that, and then a complaint comes before you on a code of conduct issue in relating to training, well, you can say, well, we did advise you to do this. So it does pull away a little bit of their defence because you've advised them to do something. But to force them to do it, or you know, the fact that one community councillor hasn't got a training plan, that's a statutory matter for Welsh Government, not for you as a community council, as a Standards Committee. Apologies. So your role is purely in matters relating to Code of Conduct and ensuring the community and principal councillors adhere to the Code of Conduct, and you can highlight in that by doing so how important training is. But you can't force them to be trained, and that's the difficult one.
Okay, but to square the circle then, it is also a reasonable position that we as a Standards Committee take that there is a requirement, albeit the Welsh Government one, not from Standards Committee, that they have training plans in place. And our interest would be, I think you said that there is a draft or a template. So that should, if they do it according to the template, should include Code of Conduct training. So that would be our assurance that they have a plan in place, and if they're following the template, that would include the Code of Conduct training. As you say, the other issues is perhaps us being a little bit more diligent in the sense of trying to prevent problems with it. Is that a fair summary here?
Indeed, it is. It's we want to. The reality is, the Standards Committee, we would like to have an easy life and not be dealing with Code of Conduct issues. That's our, ironically, so our ultimate goal is not to be busy, and not to be busy would mean councillors being trained and learning how to avoid the pitfalls that are currently before them. So yeah, absolutely agree.
Okay, that's really helpful. I don't have any further questions on this, but before I say that we accept the report, is there any further questions that any members have for here? Not seeing any indicated, therefore I suggest that we receive the report. Everybody in favour? Thank you, Hugh. Takes us to item 6, which again is for information. I'll just hand this back to you, if I may, Hugh, please.
Apologies. Yeah, it is a strange one, these are, because there is no information there before you, which is how the system runs. But just to say, a member of the public made a complaint against the councillor in Mawr Community Council, and the Ombudsman chose not to investigate. It didn't meet the two-stage test, and there's nothing else I can add to that, which is it is an odd situation. Apologies for that.
There we are. No, noted. Thank you. And unless there's anything that I've missed, I think that is the end of the meeting. So again, colleagues, thank you for your time and for your support this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.